Hello everyone and welcome to Tykus Teaches You Stuff. Today we're going to talk damage factors as well as attack versus defense. DF and AVD are both critically important to the attack formula and combat in general, and I will try to do my best to explain these two numbers. First we'll start with some definitions and where they figure in, and then we'll make some apples to apples comparisons across different weapon bases so you can see how the numbers apply. First is DF, damage factor. This is the amount of damage that a weapon is capable of inflicting compared to the end roll of your attack formula. Damage factor is the main contributor to actual applied damage, and it applies directly through raw damage and indirectly through crit rank damage. I did a video already on weapon damage, and we go into this fairly in depth, so I suggest you go back and watch that, and you'll see how exactly raw damage and crit rank are calculated and where they fall in. Today we're going to talk about damage factor as well as AVD, which we kind of brushed over in that first video. AVD, or attack versus defense, is how effective your specific weapon is against any specific given armor subgroup. This is part of your attack formula and will add or subtract directly to your end roll. We hear it all the time, what weapon is the best? Everybody has different opinions, and if you pay attention to the chat channels at all or the Amunet, it comes up fairly often, especially with new players. Somebody will come across and say, what is the best weapon for a bard? And then inevitably an older character comes back and says, well, that depends on what you're hunting and what armor they're wearing. And then we go into a big spiel about hand axes versus long swords. And they get lost, and they just grab whatever's nearest. Secondly, somebody's going to say, it doesn't really matter. Just pick what fits your playstyle and enjoy the game. Both of those are correct. While the nitty-gritty numbers do make a difference in the end, do not be afraid to pick up a weapon base just because it fits what the kind of character you're playing, and don't always go for min-maxing your character and just being about the attack rolls. Play what's fun, and if it doesn't really matter, then just don't worry about these numbers. But I want to go in and clarify exactly how the math is figured out if you want to get into it. So let's get into our comparisons. We're going to make some damage factor and attack versus defense comparisons based on a couple of assumptions. We're going to go, all of my math will be based on an attack strength of 250, a defense strength of 150. The AVD will change based on the weapon that we're comparing, but we'll always stick with a D100 roll of 50. So the way this works out is the AS and DS give us the 100 difference that we need to always have a hit, and the die roll of 50 puts us in a nice solid hit, but the AVD will slide our end roll up and down so we can make some comparisons here. First thing we're going to compare is two drastically different weapons. These charts are from a spreadsheet that I made that you can plug your numbers in, and it'll actually tell you what the raw damage is and what crit rank would be. I'll put a link to it down below, and it covers all the normal categories of weapons: one-handed edge, one-handed blunt, two-handed weapons, as well as pole arms. So today for now, we're gonna compare daggers and falchions, and in particular, we are going to use these two formulas. See, they're very similar. The AVD in this case, if you look right here at these two circles, we're going to compare armor subgroup of hauberk, which is a fairly common middle-of-the-road armor. If we swing a dagger with an attack strength of 250 against a creature that is a defense strength of 150, and we use a dagger, our AVD, the dagger versus the halberd, is 9. With our standard die roll, that's going to give us an end roll of 159. And if you look at our little chart here, the raw damage row and the critical row, see the raw damage is going to be 5.9 and with a rank 0 crit. And that is for a dagger. You can see that's not very much damage for a nice solid 159 end roll. Now if we were swinging a falchion, which I chose falchion because it's a very easy to get weapon base. There's Drake falchions in the game, and it is a nice solid weapon. It's very, very common. And if we see here, the difference is the AVD of a falchion versus halberd, instead of being 9, is 32. That's a big difference to your end roll right there. And that pushes your end roll up. That difference in the AVD pushes our end roll up the difference, and our damage factor goes from 0.01 to 0.25. So we've picked up an extra, well, more than double, so 150% more damage above the dagger. So we go from a 5.9 raw damage and a rank 0 critical to 20.5 damage and a rank 2 critical, which is going to get us probably between 5 and 10 more damage depending on the part of the body that we hit. So these are very different weapons, but I wanted you to see kind of opposite ends of the spectrum here, how choosing your weapon can make a big difference in the end. Our damage is almost quadrupled in this. So the dagger, we would have done about 6 damage, and the falchion, by the time you add the critical rank, which you would have to look at a chart to determine exactly how much critical damage would have been taken, would have probably been about 30. So that's somewhere between 4 and 5 times damage, and that's just from weapon choice. These both would have been the exact same enchant, and this is solely based on the damage factor and the AVD. So next we're going to look at 2 weapons that are very, very similar, and this is where the answer to the question depends what you're hunting comes in. So we're going to look at the hand axe and the back sword. If you kind of look across these charts, you'll see that a hand axe and a bastard sword, or a back sword, have almost the same damage factors. Against the cloth subgroup, which is that first category of 0.42, a back sword only has 0.44. The leather group is 0.3 to 0.31, and you follow that down. It's very similar across the board. Now the back sword has much better attack versus defenses in the lower armor groups. You can see that against leather, the first subgroup of leather, a hand axe has an attack versus defense of 32, and the back sword has an attack versus defense of 38. And you can see the damage there. I've kind of highlighted in red and green as to which one's better. But as you follow the chart along, you'll see that in the first category, the back sword is better. In the second categories, the hand axe is better. In the third category, which is a chain group, they're almost identical. And then the plate, the hand axe picks back up again. So it doesn't always depend, but there are definitely situations where one weapon, you can see, is significantly better than other, and there's some other times where it's a wash. Lastly, there are some weapons in the game that come with natural crit weighting, and they just need to be mentioned. There's only 2 weapon bases in the game that come with natural crit weighting, and they will push up that crit rank, the base crit rank, by a katana will push it up by approximately 1 level, and a claymore pushes it up somewhere between 3 and 4 levels. And if you're pushing up 3 critical ranks, then you're fairly regularly in the fatal criticals on any of the major parts of the body, and if you're on arms or legs, that's going to be a disabling. Also, any weapon that's made out of razorn, Razern is a material that can be player forged, and they show up in the treasure system, and there are very commonly at merchants. Razern has a natural +2 crit rating, and it will add, it just bumps up your crit rank slightly, just trying to push you into that next critical rank level. This was a short video, and I didn't want to get too in deep, but both damage factor and attack versus defense are important things to understand when choosing what your next weapon might be, or how your weapon works, or why it's not working. If you have found any of this interesting, please like, subscribe, drop a comment down below. I thank you for watching Tykus Teaches You Stuff, and I hope you guys have a great day.